Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's Catheta webinar. We're coming to you live on October 9th, 2025. For those of you who are NLC webinar first-timers in the room, our Catheta webinars got their name from the Greek word for learning. And today you're going to be learning about harnessing AI for purpose-driven grant writing from Diane Leonard, who is the president of DH Leonard DH Leonard Consulting and Grant Writing Services. Sorry about that. My name is Brooke Warrington. I'm the Training and Development Specialist here at the Native Learning Center. We're also thrilled you could tune in for the webinar today. If you could follow along while I read the disclaimer aloud, this webinar provides a summary of fundamental concepts, requirements, and/or procedures within the allotted 90 minutes. The material discussed does not illustrate all possible scenarios that could be applicable. We also have our copyright infringement law printed here. This is just a friendly reminder that the webinar materials are protected by copyright, trademark, trade secret, and other intellectual property laws. If you need to come back and view the recording of this webinar or access any of the slides, you can come back to the courses section in the future. I have put a link to the PDF of the slides in the chat for you today, and I'm going to copy and paste that in there again for you. If you opt to view one of our webinars in the future, you'll log in just like you did today, and you will click on the green banner at the top of the screen to join. We do ask that you join with listen-only capabilities because we are recording and it helps to cut down on any kind of feedback. If you've joined and my sound or my voice is coming out of the wrong device, maybe you're trying to use headphones, maybe you have a Bluetooth speaker, whatever the case may be, you can go down to the bottom of your screen and you'll either click on a little telephone icon like you see on my screen, or you might just have a headset icon. But either way, you can click on that and bring up a list of your speaker devices and you can select the right audio output. We do, of course, encourage class participation throughout the webinar. We want to hear your questions. We want to know your comments. If you have any tech support issues that I can help you navigate through, you can use the public chat for this. If you don't yet have it open, you can go over to the messages panel to the far left of your screen and click on public chat. That'll pull up the full public chat between you, the rest of the attendees, the instructor, and myself. If you wish to send something in, just come down to the box that says send message to public chat. Type in what you'd like to say or ask, and then you can hit enter, or you can click on the little paper airplane button, and that'll send it in. If you've joined and you notice that you didn't mute your mic, that's not a problem at all. You could just come down and hit the mute button. And if you want to raise your hand, maybe you think we missed a question along the way, you can use the hand raise feature that's all the way over to the right. We do have a list of important links for you in the shared notes section. Again, you can find a link to a PDF of today's slides. You can find a link to the webinar feedback survey, the link to join our emails so that you know whenever our webinars are happening. Lots of good stuff in there. We would love if you tried out the public chat for us now. It's always fun to see who all is present on the webinar. So you could take a moment and let us know your name, where you're tuning in from. It's nice to see all the different tribal nations represented. Your work or your role in Indian country, it might have led you to today's webinar. You might be here for personal information. And your tribal affiliation if you have one. You might be a tribal employee and not have your own tribal affiliation. That is okay too. And then just a quick final note while y'all are introducing yourselves in the chat, you should have a menu all the way to the left-hand side of your screen. You might just see a list of icons if you don't have it expanded, or you see exactly what you see in the picture here. I just want to advise you to try not to click on that. It's not going to give you like a, are you sure you want to leave the webinar message? Instead, it'll just pull you out directly and place you wherever you've clicked on the menu. So just try your best not to click on it. If you do, not a big deal. You can always just click on the green banner once again to come back into the webinar if you leave. All right. And then while everybody's getting introduced, it is my honor and pleasure to introduce your webinar instructor for today, Diane Leonard. We lovingly call her the goddess of grants over at the Native Learning Center. And Diane, I have made you presenter now.
Thanks, Brooke, and hello, everyone. I am so excited and honored to be here with you today, and this is going to be a big topic. It always is, and I'm super excited to see how many folks were here and ready to go for all the housekeeping stuff, too, because that says to me, you're like, I don't want to miss any of the conversation about AI and grants. And I do recognize some of your names from other sessions. So hello, hello, hello. It is so good to see you again. And for those who don't know me, here's the formal title. There's what Brooke and the team might jokingly refer to me as, but really it's true. I do love all things grants. That's not a lie. And I have been in this space for long time now, about 25 years in the grant space, but first as a grant maker. And that was way back when we were piloting online applications. And if I could tell my younger self then what my today self knows about how AI was going to influence the way portals are designed and the way that people write to put into the portals, oh my, the things I might have said. Seen a lot. But AI is changing so fast for how it's influencing our work in the grant space. I never, ever claim to have all the answers related to grants, but definitely now each and every day brings some new learning. So you might have seen or experienced something with a particular funder, and even just the last few days, it might actually help all of us. So I'm super excited to see how many of you are already in that public chat. I'm going to want you, in whatever way you're comfortable, to stay there, to engage, to share with each other, to support each other with the things that you are learning and seeing. Because, as I said, every day could be a new exciting journey as it relates to AI and grants. You're just not quite sure what is going to happen next in terms of the way that a funder might react to the wild increase in volume that they are seeing, that a new research tool might unveil their latest update from their software team, leaving you going, what happened to my old tool? You just don't know where the AI-supported, AI-driven changes are going to come in our grant space on any given day. And they said grants are dull. Never, ever, ever. So we're going to talk about not nuances because they're changing too fast. And even if I'd made the deck last week, it still would be out of date because it's changing that fast. Rather, I want to give us some structural ways that we can think about AI and its impact on our grant work so that we have a framework for success. We have some factors to consider that will help us feel comfortable in how we decide yes or no related to some of the changes that are becoming available to us. I am going to talk about the code of ethics related to the grant sector. And these can apply to your work whether you are a member of a professional association for grant writers, grant professionals, or fundraisers or not. So I'll make sure that everybody knows what they are. And I do have Q&A at the end. But this is a pretty hot topic. And I'm thinking that you came to today's session with at least one, oh, I hope Diane answers this question type idea. If you started the session and you have a question that you want to make sure gets answered, please do me a huge favor. Could you type that into the public chat right now? I want to get a sense of what we've got for concerns and questions as a group from the very beginning. We'll see if we've got any themes, and I'll make sure that we get them all addressed. I still at the end will ask you if you have any outstanding questions, but I would love to see what you have for starting questions. And there's no question too small or too big. I would love to hear any of the questions in that public chat that you're bringing to today's session about how, why, when, all of those questions. I'd love to have them in the public chat. So as we're thinking about grants, it's October. I say that with trepidation because the weather in far, far upstate New York, I have to check the app every day because I'm not sure if it feels more like August or if it feels more like December. It can't decide. But you know what I'm most excited about this month? The Grant Professionals Association Conference is coming up. Grant Summit is at the end of October, and I'm going to be in a room with about 1,000 other grant professionals for 3 days. What kind of fun is that? That's what I'm most excited about. And that's what's fueling me and getting me so excited to make it through the deadlines until then. If you're thinking about something that's got you super excited, how can you bring that energy into our conversation in grants? If you want to share what you're excited about, I'd always love to hear that as well. The public chat is there for you. We are all in a different place with grants. I get it. We're all here because we want to talk about grant money. We need to get grant revenue. We're feeling a lot of the pressure of the increased competition in the field. But for what is your particular focus area for getting grants? How long have you been writing grants? Where's your comfort space? Evaluation narrative, program narrative. That we're all different. So regardless of where your starting today, my goal for you is for you to take away one tactical thing. There will be many, but I want you to take one tactical thing that can help as your framework, your approach to AI and your grant writing work. At the end, if I should remember, I'm going to ask you what is the one thing that you're going to prioritize putting in place or turning into a conversation with your colleagues. So if you want to start a list of what those options could be, and then at the end pick one, that'd be great. In the public chat, should you be willing, on a scale of 1 to 5, 1, no comfort with AI at all, none. 5, super comfortable. Don't hand me the mic, don't make me talk about coding, but like super comfortable with AI. Could you let me know where you're starting today in terms of your comfort level with AI? I'm not saying about like personal passion for or utilization. I'm thinking more like a self-assessed comfort level. I'm like a 2.5 or a 3 today, because every day I'm reading so much about what's happening in our space and the tools. I'm like, it's going so fast. I feel like I can't keep up. I've got comfort about like what some of my tools that my team and I rely on, but I have this nagging fear that there's all this change that maybe it's because of like my tech less background, or I don't know. I'm like, wow, it's changing faster than I could have imagined if you had asked me 6 months ago. So I'm really in the middle, although I use AI in a wide range of ways. We're going to talk about some of them today, but in terms of my comfort level, my comfort is actually less than my skill. And it's more the FOMO that has me feeling like, wait, am I sure I'm using this the right way? Should I go ask my teenagers if they can use it in a better way than I am? That's probably an indicator that I'm questioning my comfort level and my skill. I don't want to miss out on like the right way to use it, the best way to use it. And I see we've got a range of comfort levels in the room today. That's great. What I want us to think about is how can AI help us streamline the different elements of our grant process? That's going to mean something different for each of you. You're probably using a variety of different tools for your research before you even worry about what is AI driven, what is AI assisted. You probably have different preferences related to your project management tools and approaches. That's going to mean different things for your AI. You probably have different preferences, even as it relates to the structure for how your team operates in just its like server style. There's different tools if you're in the Google suite versus the Microsoft suite. We've got a lot that is going to be different. So for each of you, whether that feels better or not, you're going to have slightly nuanced answers. Why does our use of AI matter? It matters for lots and lots of reasons. And so we're going to look at some of the things for why it matters. We're going to talk about ethics here in a minute. And I've got 5 guiding factors that we could think about that will potentially, I think, they can serve as guardrails for you and your colleagues to talk about grants and the utilization of AI in your grant seeking. So why does it matter? I think you know it matters. That's why you're here. Why does it matter not just to you, though, but to others in your tribal organization? We have the potential to literally write an entire grant application using an AI tool. We could do that. We could, though, back up in our process. We could use AI to try to find funders. We could use AI to try and find grant maker contact information. We could use AI to build funder relationship talking points before we would reach out to a grant maker. We could use AI tools to help craft our grant reports once we get funded. We could use AI in all of those spaces. But I'm wondering, has anyone used AI personally or professionally and had it, regardless of what tool you might have been using as a learning model or an assistant in another tool, has anyone ever had AI give them incorrect information? Show of hands in the public chat. Y for yes, N for no, question mark if you're not sure. Has it ever given you inaccurate information? And it's like, Diane, that's like a rhetorical question, right? Okay, but thank you, because you're validating. Like, I'm not the only one that's had this experience. My team's not the only one that's had this experience. It has happened to you as well. So it matters because we're thinking here about the difference between efficiency and effectiveness. From an efficiency standpoint, there are always more grants that we would like to write than we have time to write. I say that statement with some pretty solid conviction. There will always be more grants that we want to write than we have time and ability to write. So that's the efficiency thing that drives us to say, how can AI help us? But there's that whole effectiveness thing. Is it effective to use AI? Is it right information? Is it wrong information? Is it such poorly written or so obviously AI-driven information that it takes us hours and hours and hours to edit it, and we should have just written it from the first spot? Maybe. So as we think about effectiveness versus efficiency and what that means, I actually want to introduce a third E word into the conversation, and that's the ethics of being in the grant space. So when we're thinking about what it means to be ethical in our work as grant writers, as grant professionals, as tribal organization members or employees who are related to and doing grant work, there are 4 key ethical principles that I think we need to consider. The integrity of our work. How is it that we disclose if our work was AI generated? Funders, not all, but some funders in their online applications are now asking, did you use AI to help write your application? Did you use AI to write your application? There's a whole lot of questions about what those language choices mean. They mean like I used Grammarly or not, but they're asking, did you use AI to help with this application? So we have that concern. You may have read a blog post somewhere that says this was written with the assistance of AI. You may have seen an image somewhere online or in social media that says this image was generated with AI. So the integrity of how do we disclose that our grant was generated with AI assist if that is indeed what we did. So that's our integrity element. Accountability as an ethical principle. How do we take our awesome human approach and experience and background and knowledge to ensure that the AI-assisted work, wherever and however we might end up using it, is, got our approval, our review, that it is truly our voice? That's the accountability part. The confidentiality of the information. There's lots of free trials and tools that you could use, and you can put all sorts of information in there, but you're teaching the models, and you're putting in potentially information that could be sensitive or confidential in nature. Yes, depending on what type of AI-assisted tool or learning model we're talking about, we could lock it down. We could say don't teach anything, but we need to ensure that our AI use is adhering to our organization's confidential policies, that we're protecting our community. And then lastly, competence. Are there any limitations to AI tools? My current answer is yes, and it might sound a little bit sassy. However, I was a grant maker first. And I can tell you as a grant maker that grant makers, if you pick up the phone or if they read an email, did not want to hear from grant consultants. They wanted to hear from people that were in the organization, people who knew the work, people who could answer questions. Do you think grant makers want to hear from on the phone, that would sound weird anyway, or in an email, they'll see the M dashes. They'll know. Think they want to hear from AI? No. They might be okay with AI in terms of an equity play. AI makes it more equitable for smaller organizations to put out grant applications. They might not have the money to pay for staff to write grant applications. So I don't disagree. I don't fight that. It could be an equity thing. It could be a positive. But in terms of competence, knowing what it means to be a grant professional, funder relationships sit right between funder research and the writing of an application. So this center skill is an important competency that grant folks like us need to bring to the table. Funders don't want to hear from AI, not in that relationship building phase. Still, people granting to people. So how do we take those ethical considerations into our approach as we think about AI in our day-to-day grants? Each of you in your tribal organizations might come up, as I said, with nuanced answers of what's right for you. You need to think about what is best for your organizational values. And you also need to take into consideration what are your funder expectations. Each grant maker, they can have their own preferences and their own priorities as it relates to AI in the space of their grantees. So we were always worried about customizing our writing to grant makers. Now we want to think about how our grant makers think about how did we get to the customized writing that we present to them. They have opinions about AI, but unless we ask, or maybe unless they actually write it out somewhere, we don't know which side they're on in terms of their opinions for AI. Good for grants, a little stressful about grants. So we want to ensure that everything we do is taking a step towards putting forward the best, most accurate, most true to who you are and the work you want to do content, even if there's a little bit of AI assist. So I have 5 factors that I encourage you to consider. 5 things that help us to keep those ethical principles in place when we are looking at a research tool, when we're looking at a writing library tool, when we're looking at anything, we can come back to our 5 factors to help us make decisions. So the first is the piece of disclosure. In your working standard operating procedures, is there a spot where you want to call out that it's okay to use an AI tool? For example, here, I'm going to put a delineator in the chat box. How many of you have ever used Grammarly to assist you in editing a written piece of work? I say Grammarly because you can have the free version and put text in, but how many of you have used Grammarly in editing a piece of your work? Grammarly, behind the scenes, there's AI assistants making those suggestions for what is better. Not everybody loves Grammarly, right? That's fine. But is that okay for your organization? I mean, I grew up like with Microsoft Word and the little paperclip. I'm like, how do I turn that off, right? It was always on the screen. And so we had our initial inherent grammar and spell check. But Grammarly is more than what used to be super basic, like Windows 95 grammar, right? Far past it. But is that acceptable in your team? Are folks like, no, I'm okay with Grammarly. I'm good. Okay, then let's make sure that we make it transparent. It's visible. It's in what is allowable for software in our organization. We say to our colleagues, hey, yeah, Grammarly can be on your computer. It's one of the allowable tech supports you can have. I give it as an example since it is so widespread and often it's the free version people are using. But do you think if you're using Grammarly that you need to disclose that to the grant maker? If they say, did you use AI to produce this application? and air quotes, all you did was use Grammarly to assist in the editing, do you have to disclose it? That was actually a very hot debate on LinkedIn among a number of grant consultants and grant professionals the other day. And folks are like, no, Grammarly, that's not what funders are actually asking about. They have been used to that for a long time. But internally, still worth talking about because it is a real quick, slippery slope into other tools. So whatever tool we're thinking about, if there is an AI element, we want to make sure that we talk about it and we agree. Do we? Don't we? When we think about data protection, individual identifying client information, even the idea of putting a client success story into an AI tool, something that's a learning model, we're now teaching that model. Are we teaching that model, I should say, about a person? Are we using, is it like a totally anonymized persona? Or is it real information about a real person? You might say, oh yeah, we would never put like our client database in it. But where's the line in terms of what narrative work you might put to a funder? You want to put in there in terms of client data from a focus group and quotes that came from a focus group. I'm posing big, broad questions. I'm not saying there is one right answer. These are the sort of questions that you as an organization should be considering as you look at how AI could be impacting your otherwise previous approach to data privacy and protection. When we think about who we are as grant professionals, as grant writers, we are so needed. So very, very needed. AI can potentially help make us more efficient. The effectiveness is sometimes up for debate. As we already agreed, sometimes AI gives us things that are just wrong. What is one of the sure tells for you that something has been AI written? Can you let me know in the public chat if you are reading an email, a LinkedIn post, a blog post, a flyer with some information about an upcoming event, doesn't matter what it is. For you, are there any tells that it was written by AI? Let me know in the public chat, please. What is it that for you lets you know, I feel pretty comfortable and confident, I might even place a wager that this was written with AI. I always love to see what people come up with. There's a few that my team loves to chat about. I was recently reading a study that was out of the UK, and they asked folks to guess. Is this piece of written text, this piece of written work, is it AI generated or was it written by a human? And people were only right half the time. So basically it's a coin flip. They're like, I thought it was written by AI. Nope, that was a person. I thought it was written by a person. Nope, that was AI. It was something ridiculous, like 2% of people were accurate on each and every body of text that they were presented with. I feel like that might also be kind of lucky. Maybe. But really, it was like, it's a toss-up of whether or not people can tell. However, I think you're right. There are some pretty important tells when you're looking at a body of text. Yeah, those extended dashes, M dashes. AI loves to pepper text with M dashes, and perhaps that'll be taught out of it at some point, but for now, pad name to the M dash. Our copy editor, Krista, is like, it has an appropriate place for use. And now we're scared to use it because they'll be like, oh, that was written with AI. So I like, Colton, that you put excessive. So yes, one M dash, maybe. Multiple M dashes? Oh yeah, people are going to assume it was AI. Imogene says it's generic and not related to the organization's style. Absolutely red flag. Like it. I just read something from you last week. This doesn't sound like you at all. It means it quickly made it through. There was no human oversight to say, wait a second, I think we should make some changes. It happens. Too much verbiage. Caitlin, yes. I was like, wait, I was trying to say it in fewer characters and you gave me more characters. We had a whole bunch of fun playing with what would happen. We took text that we wrote, not for a client, it wasn't a real organization. We just took some fake text that we wrote, like, okay, now help me say it. And we tried to have like different word lengths and see what would it add, what would it take out, what would it decide was important. And one time I'm like, that is not 500 characters. It was something like 732. Why'd you add more? I gave you a limit, right? And then it was like, oh, I'm so sorry. We had a good laugh. It needs our human oversight. Something a lot of folks have said, well, I'll write mine and then I'll use it to do the character cut if I'm trying to get into a smaller spot. That was actually what made us play with that idea as a team. Like, you can't trust that it counted correctly. It needs our human oversight. So for right now, it can't replace us. People can see through it. Funders can see through it. Major donors can read through it. So again, efficiency, potentially. Effectiveness, not yet. Now there's something else that I had not originally considered. I'll be honest. When I was talking about AI, it was a few years ago, I went to a special event that the Grant Professionals Association put on. I was like, okay, it might happen. But I hadn't thought about what would happen as the different learning models are taught for how any societal bias could then influence what's going to be written and used and how it'll start to propagate. So, for example, you might have as a tribal organization a style guide related to your language choices that you will put into proposals. In fact, could you let me know how many of your tribal organizations have a style guide, not about font size and color for like printing, but as it relates to language choice in, say, reports, community publications, grant applications, things like that? Let me know in the public chat, Y for yes, if any of you have a style guide like that. One way that you could avoid bias, try to keep it your tone, is by putting your style guide, if you have one, into the tool and saying, following this document, please help with this. That way it is your thought, your approach, your language that is being used. We've seen folks do that. But I'll tell you a little story. I was recently working on a project for a podcast that I'm a co-host of. It's called Agile Driven Impact. It's about project management stuff. So yes, grant related, but project management stuff. And my co-host and I, we were talking about actually the race car team that we were on in college. It's true. I was on the race car team. No, I wasn't a race car driver. My job was fundraising for the team every year. But they let everybody drive the car at least once. What a thrill. So fun. Okay, but back to the story. So there I am trying to work on the podcast. And the phrase race car was in our outline for an upcoming episode. And I was trying to play around with some new puns. Spoiler alert, that podcast, yeah, it's super punny because that's just my sense of humor. And so I was trying to play with a little bit of a driving pun for something, but the phrase race car was in this one-page document. And I asked, it was Gemini in this case, I asked Gemini for some input, gave it a few specific suggestions for what I wanted, and it said, I'm sorry, I can't assist you because, and it gave me this whole reasoning for why, because it won't talk about race. I'm like, I'm not talking about race. And so I pushed back and I said, I only used the word race once, and it was in the phrase race car. Are you sure you can't help me? Oh, I'm so sorry, you're right. Actually, I can help with that. And so I was actually super impressed that the initial reaction was can't help you, because it was trying to avoid putting any bias or concerns into the work. Okay, in that instance, I knew I was right. I knew I could push back, and it was okay. But if you have a style guide, your language, your choices, that can be one way to help protect your information. But I still want to be in some sort of locked tool, whether it's, like the paid business version of ChatGPT or Claude, Block. I want to do what I can so that it is only learning from what I put in versus all the other things around it that I don't want it to pull from. This is why I said I'm like a 3 for comfort level. There is so much to try and stay on top of, so many emails from our different tool partners and providers. I've got a new release. Look at this new thing. It's launch week, 5 new days of new things. And I'm like, I can't keep up. And that's in the grant space alone. So I've had to think about what is it that I'm going to watch? Who am I going to listen to so that I can maybe turn down the volume on the FOMO a little bit and stay up to speed. I don't pretend to know about AI in all sorts of other industries. I'm like, I just want to know about AI in my industry. And I do everything I can within the time allotted while still doing the rest of the work that we need to do to learn little bits, share with my team members and my colleagues, hey, here's something I tried and learned, not having all of us always trying and always learning, because we want to still get our important work done. If all we did was play with AI and learn about AI, the grant applications would sit still. There's so much that we could constantly be learning from. So with those 5 factors in mind, I recommend that at a minimum, the grant team has an AI policy in place. Ideally, I know a lot of my colleagues, right, what they really want is an organizational AI policy. I'm not about the whole org, I'm about grants. I want to see at a minimum an AI policy in grant-seeking organizations that addresses AI. Could you let me know? Do you have one in place? Even if you're like, oh, it's draft, we've just started it, could you let me know in the public chat? Do you have one? Draft one? Bratton, high five. Awesome. Love that you are drafting one now. That's okay. Get something working in place. How are we going to build one? What is it that we want to have in it for information? So some basic information that I think you might want to consider. What is the allowed scope of AI? And the reason that this is going to be like a right now, make sure you have a date on it. This isn't going to sit still very long. This isn't going to get dusty. It is likely something that will be updated quarterly. Maybe more, but we'll say quarterly. This isn't an annual update sort of policy. It's changing too fast. So at the time that you're drafting, where can it? Where shouldn't it? Where won't it? Where are we saying no thank you? Absolutely not. Some teams, we work with one organization, they're like, listen, if AI is going to make it so we can write more and get more out the door, yes. We have others that say do not touch it for writing. So we have clients that are on absolutely opposites of the spectrum for the use of AI, which means that our tools we've got to think about who are we working with and what is our baseline. I give you those 2 organizations as examples because they're both awesome and they're doing amazing things and having lots of grant success. So this isn't a judgment for where you say you will. It's about you as an organization having agreement on where you will and where you will not. Within your policy, I encourage you to put in the process for how will you ensure that people, awesome people, have read, edited, and approved anything that AI created before it goes anywhere. Before it goes into a funder acknowledgement letter, before it goes into a letter of inquiry, before it goes into a grant report, before, I don't know, do you want to let AI help write emails to grant makers? right? Like, that's a tricky one. Sometimes I get stuck writing emails. It'd be nice to have a little assist. So set the protocols in place for what types of grant-related text and communications. When do they get edited? How do they get approved? How are we sure that we're not saying, oh, yeah, that was a nice quick email, click, and the funder goes, that sounded nothing like them. I wonder where that came from. Right? We want to avoid situations like that. We want our AI policy for our grants team to ideally point to the Grant Professionals Association Code of Ethics or the Association of Fundraising Professionals Code of Ethics, or maybe you have another professional association that calls this out. Our copywriter, Krista, I can't think of what ACES stands for. I bet it's American Copywriters and Copy Editors Society, something like that. ACES is just about people who love to edit, right? They have an ethical policy too. So maybe that's what you point towards. But there are lots of big standards that exist. And the nice part is that they're doing some of that hard work to make sure that the codes of ethics for the professions are meeting national needs, are meeting national standards. When we think about our AI policy, having some sort of structure and system in place for ensuring that the team is up to date, is current on the tools you're using, giving some support and some boundaries for where and how people can learn, can help with the FOMO that I described. Oh my gosh, should I go to every webinar that's about AI and grant tools? No, we're going to come to you. Team, we're going to let you know what we've tested, what we've agreed on. We'll make sure we have a team-wide learning session and debrief on it. I'm just giving that as an example, something that lets them know how are we going to approach what we're learning about, how we might, as it says, audit our usage. You don't need to have lots of detail, but some light structure to let people know what is the plan for continuously learning, reviewing, and potentially changing what your usage looks like based on what has changed in the field. The piece about expectations and transparency and disclosure, putting that into your policy makes it much clearer for folks. Here's when we definitely tell people that we've used AI. And it might say something like, if you have any questions, consult your supervisor or consult your senior leaders, right? If you have a question, that doesn't mean you should go ahead. I'll ask for forgiveness later. No, that means you should ask before you move forward. So setting some of those basic expectations in place. When in doubt, we're going to have a team discussion about it and make a decision at our weekly staff meeting. You get to decide, but ensure that people know we're going to disclose when we use it in these specific situations because we agree this is important for folks to know it was AI assisted, AI generated. Now, in terms of what the policy looks like, what your draft is, well, so we do have the slides, which has kind of like these high-level notes. And so when we started to talk about it as a team, can you guess what I decided to do first? So we're Google-based as a team, and so I was in Gemini, which is the locked professional version. And at the time, I also was testing Claude because that comes automatically not teaching. And I also had a free trial at the moment to business version for ChatGPT. Those were the three that I was like, oh, pretty common things. And so I typed in, as a grant writing team, I want an AI policy to help guide our actions. And I let it spit out for me some templates for standard operating procedures. Now, if I was really thinking, I would have put in from the very beginning our SOP template that we have, because then it would have come out in whatever they were going to propose, but also have been like in our format. So I was like, oh, next time. But so it was interesting how different they were. And so our team actually used those as some of the initial frameworks to build ours using all these things that I just had out on the screen. We made sure that we had taken into account our nuances, the things that were important to us, the things that made us feel like, listen, we've got to set a policy in place that works for us, knowing we work with lots of organizations. So ours might be honestly too heavy. It might be too big because there's all these if this, then that type moments. We've got to think about who the client is in each situation. So there's a whole bunch of conditions and criteria. I'm guessing yours for your one tribal organization doesn't have to be quite that long. So I think it's actually a fascinating way to use AI as you build your own policy. I'd also, because then we played with it some more, and I took the Grant Professionals Association Code of Ethics, and I put that in as well to see how it would change the answers. It did, just a little bit, but I think honestly AI sometimes loves to wordsmith. So what can we think about, though, that once we have, and you might say, Diane, AI is already in my space and I don't have a policy. That's okay. I'm not saying stop what you're doing and come up with an AI policy in this very, very, very moment. I am suggesting that you put it in process, get it rolling, maybe see if you can get something drafted in the next few weeks so you can continuously evolve it and have it in place maybe by the end of the quarter. I get it. You have grant deadlines that have to get done. You have grant reports that have to get done. You might have a review and approval process for a new policy. So let's see how fast you can get at least a lightweight draft in place so that then when things come up that might be innovative in nature, you're like, is this okay? You'll have a policy that you could refer to. And if it doesn't address it, then you could say, dear colleagues, I found something about AI that I want to do, and I don't see clear in directions for me, clear instructions in our policy. Do we want to add it, or does somebody else have a different interpretation? So what it's doing is it's creating a really nice discussion. So even just by having like that rough draft, even if it's not fully approved, will promote, I think, the discussion that is so important about AI use. Imogene's asked, does my policy require to get permission to use AI from clients? For writing work, it does. Yeah, unless we have written permission to use AI for written work, and even then we don't want to do it, but like they could grant it to us, but we don't want to do it. But yes, it does, because that is not an area that we feel is giving us the effectiveness for what they want right now. We have permission to use it in other related spaces, and it's part of what we're actually going to talk about next year with these innovative approaches. So where is an okay spot? Sometimes you're like, I can't find any more funders. I feel like I've read everything there is about funders that will support this mission area. That could maybe just help you feel like you're not missing anything. I really shook all the potential funders that I could out of this tool. And now I've just triple checked that like nothing else came up. That can be interesting. You could say, I want to use AI because I want to tighten our language as it relates to specific funder guidelines. So here you go. Not changing who's writing it, but rather putting more pattern recognition into it. So this is something we've been playing with a bit. Funders are, right, this is talking about funder guidelines. It's not using it for writing. But if we take a written body of work, and so far we've been playing with things we write that are not real. If we take written work and we put it into a tool, and we also put the funder's guidelines into the tool, real funder guidelines. Please provide feedback on how well aligned this proposal is against these funder guidelines. Please provide suggestions on how it could more closely align. That's a very different editing question. And really what it's doing, yes, it's looking at the guidelines, but usually these different learning models are also pulling from the funder's website. You can give it more prompts for how far it can pull, but now you can look for pattern recognition. Oh, that's a really great suggestion. I always use the phrase healthcare, one word, and the funder seems to always use healthcare, two words. Like, not a big deal, but oh yeah, that would make it look more like, and so, right, that's what I mean by like pattern recognition, things that are nuanced differences that we might not, or even our editors and our team might not see. When we think about our different tools, who has a favorite research tool that they use to find grant maker information? Could you go ahead and type into the public chat, what is your research tool of choice right now? There's lots and lots of awesome ones. The reason I ask about research tools is that these are tools that are designed for us as grant seekers, grant writers. So whether you're thinking about Instrumental, Foundation Directory Online, Grant Station, Foundation Search, oh, I'm like missing a bunch. Please don't tell them that, but like there's a long list. They all are using AI. All of them are now using AI in various ways behind the scenes. So when we think about the right tools, well, the good news is that they are already reputable research tools. And now, in addition to their nonprofit-friendly pricing and systems that are designed, they get it, they're part of like our networks, they understand us. Now they're trying to up their efficiency and they're adding in some AI. Great, okay. What about all of the new tools on the market that are related to grants that are not previously known? I am not going to name any names. The list is too long for me to start naming names. But on average, once a day, either myself or our marketing and training product owner, Megan, gets an email from some new tool. We are this great new tool, and we're trying to partner with consulting agencies that are focused on grant writing so that we can show you our pilot tool. I'm like, did you write this or did AI write this to me? Often a concern. But I'm like, no, not another one. There are so many. So when we think about the right tools to help with grant writing, the reason that I put some of these notes on this particular slide, how long has it been around? What do we have for like reputation score of this particular tool? How sure are we about its security, especially if we're talking about written work? How truly nonprofit, tax exempt, tribal organization friendly is it? I'm not saying that like the awesome software people that might have had a startup idea, maybe they're going to like really change the industry. But be super careful about all of the new tools that have come to market. Literally in the last month, year and a half, the list is exhausting and long. When we think about what is an innovative, a creative, a good way potentially to use AI, your final proposal, that's who's representing you. That is your voice in front of a grant maker. And here's the terrible truth. Grant makers are getting more proposals than ever. Instrumental is one of those research tools I just quickly mentioned, but it is not Instrumental TAL. There's no A in the spelling. I just typed it into the chat. They just released a report yesterday, I think, that was talking about how the nonprofit level of competition and grants, how factually accurate it is. It's not just that we're all feeling that way, it is true. Whether you were getting federal funding before 2025 or not, does not matter for the impact that you are feeling and probably seeing in some of your award responses from grant makers. It's real, and it's scary real. So if you think about, even if no one is using AI to write applications, the volume of what's being submitted to grant makers is through the roof. True story, this morning, Firehouse Subs, so like a national franchise for like sub sandwiches, They opened their portal to accept applications. They had announced in advance what day it would open. They said it would open on October 9th. They went a step further and they said it would open at 10 a.m. Eastern on October 9th. Would anyone like to please guess in the public chat how many minutes it took for that portal to close because they had received 600 applications? Would you like to take a guess for me in the public chat? How many minutes was that portal open for? I mean, it's only about 3 Eastern, so we know that it's something far less, probably given the way I told the story, than 5 hours, because I've been with you for about an hour. Oh my goodness, if it was only 2 minutes, Imogen, I would have cried. But it's practically that bad. 21. Done, gone. Like, wow. And it's not that people could write their application that, I mean, I guess some people are fast typers, but it's because people knew it was going to be open and they prepared. All right, so point of the story, you're like, how does that help me think about my authentic voice? If you use AI to write your application and create some standard responses, is it going to stand out in the portal when you are one of 600? Probably not. You need to write authentically about who you are and the work you're doing in your community. You don't want to just kind of hide there in the crowd, in the pile. The competition is so fierce, you need to put forward language that is going to stand out. And actually, then, to go into this one about the human editing and fact checking, we want to make sure that, yes, we're thinking about the funders' guidelines, but we're ensuring the accuracy of our work so that if we get pulled from the pile of 600, that then when they go to read it, it is accurate to who we are and what we want to do, and that it is not written in such a way that, oh yeah, it just hit all the keywords, all the buzzwords that we were hoping we'd get pulled for. That could be a recipe for absolute disaster if you're funded, and it is not true to what you wanted to propose, to how you want to implement it, and to who you are as an organization. So writing only using AI to get those key buzzwords is going to make grant implementation, if funded, more stressful than ever. We are, as a team, headed to the Nonprofit Storytelling Conference in just a few weeks. It's one of my favorites. If anybody's in San Diego and is going to be there this year, be sure to let me know. It's all fundraising, not just grants. Grants are a tiny part. And one of the common things that we talk about there, maybe it's a community of like 500 people, but one of the really common things is talking about how do you get permission to use really important stories that are coming from the communities raising money. How is it that we're doing so in a respectful way? How are you doing so in a strengths-based way that's supporting the individuals in the community? And so that conversation's been going on since the first year I was there, maybe back in like 2017. And the conference has been around longer than that. Constant theme every time to the conversation. But last year was the first time that then the use of AI for writing got into the storytelling piece. What sort of story is AI going to write that will sound like a true, meaningful client success story? And what does that mean if that's what we're putting forward? Well, so then what would we do? Could we put actual client stories or quotes into AI and let it modify the story? Right? Big debate about, well, how is that going to play out? Now, I haven't been with that community in almost a year, so it'll be interesting to hear from these various nonprofits how they've addressed it. But at the time, when they were thinking about how they could be true to their ethics around storytelling and supportive, and again, from a strengths-based spot, they don't want to put real client information into the AI tool for their stories, yet they want the efficiency that comes with AI. How would we make sure that we're truly taking care of our community, of our clients, of our patients? that AI policy to make sure that a really well-intentioned intern or fundraiser or grant professional don't make a mistake and put information into AI just to get a really good story. I believe more funders are going to ask, did you use AI to generate your application or not? And they're yes, no questions. I have seen one that was not just yes, no, but if yes, please explain. Does anybody want to answer yes? Hard to say. Like, why are you asking? If you say yes, are you automatically throwing me out? If I say yes, is there an acceptable thing I could say in like my explanation that would let me stay in the process? So how do we know in terms of our transparency before we even start our draft, before we even think about what do we want to do, where might we use AI, what should we really do? We should reach out to the funder and see if they'll have any conversation with us at all. So, great question. Will evaluation criteria include that in the scoring mix? I think that funders, they're going to use it in making decisions. The Firehouse Subs example from today was 600. There was a private foundation that closed last month because they got over 900 applications. I was a grant maker. I used to carry around and I'd be like, oh my gosh, I have so many proposals to read. And I'd have like 45. And that took a pile of time. I'm like, I don't even know how I would read. And I love to read. Like reading 900? How much time are you going to give me? Oh my goodness. Right? Like something's got to give. And so that's where I think some funders are going to start to say, you said yes, you said no, here's how I feel about it. But we're not sure how the funder feels about it when they just ask, did you use it or not? So to me, that's an outreach question. If you're a grant maker, you call them on the phone, type an email, dear grant maker, I see this question and I'm wondering what your AI use policy related to your grantees is. If it's not on their website, if it's not in their materials, maybe they'll answer. But I think it's fair to ask. The same way it's always been fair to ask them if they'll fund indirect cost expenses or not. Let's start to ask them about their opinions on AI. So is it going to be a requirement on federal versus private? Ooh, hold on, wait, let's see. I don't even know where my magic 8-ball is. I don't have a crystal ball, but I do have like the replica magic 8-ball. That's my answer. I don't know. I can see it coming up in city, county, state, federal agencies. I can definitely, foundations are where we're already seeing it. I think it's going to be fair game as a question in any grant seeking. But the opinion about why it's being asked and like what that means for their policy or their opinion about it as a grant making organization, I think is going to be different for many of them. So we have to ask. Now, Anna, this is the one that people have been asking for more than a year. Your question, what about reviewers using AI to evaluate applications? So let's just ponder for a minute the number of tools that have come to me and been like, oh my gosh, I've got a new tool. Like, could you test it? Could you promote it? And you're like, oh, no. Guarantee, I've talked to like my community foundation friends and some other funders. There are people on the other side of this whole thing going, hey, dear grant maker that's overwhelmed with 900 applications in just 1 week, I have an answer for you. I have an AI plugin that you can use in your tool to help make your decisions super fast. Yeah, it's there. Now, how many are using it right now? They're facing the same ethical questions. And like, is it going to make a mistake? What's efficiency versus effectiveness? They're having the exact same questions, but at a very high level. We know grant makers of all shapes and sizes are able to take a list of words, either a list of words they want or a list of words that they don't want, and say, if you use the words that we don't want, you get an automatic no. We absolutely know funders can do that. We also, on the flip side, know that funders could say, if you use any of these words, these are the good words, we'll fund you, or we'll consider funding you. So that initial sort, yeah, we know in 2025 that can happen. How do they prompt an AI tool to then take a second sweep through their pile of applications? Stay tuned. I don't think it's far off from being more prominent, but grant makers are grappling with, like, are we sure it's the best decision for us? So yes, it is. There's a lot to consider because it's what we want to do for effectiveness and efficiency on our time on the pre-award, but those completely overwhelmed grant makers trying to make sure they're making the best grants possible, they're also facing similar questions and concerns. So AI, here's an interesting thing that we found as how do we feel about this? Do folks like writing or creating talking points for reaching out to grant makers? Could you just give me a show of hands? How many of you like creating talking points for reaching out to grant makers? Y for yes, S for sort of, N for no. Some do, some grant writers don't. No hard feelings. It's not everybody's favorite thing. You're like, I want to write about give me the money. But like, what do you say? What's a good script? What's the right amount of information to give to a leader that might meet a funder? And sometimes you're like, I don't know what I want to ask them. Like, I understood their guidelines. I don't have any questions. I mean, one of my go-to questions if I'm making talking points, if we have a nice conversation, sure, I want to be ready to ask them about their AI policy, or I want to be ready to ask them about their indirect costs. I want to be ready to ask them about a recent grant that they were super proud of, get them to talk about themselves. But to get to ask questions, I have to tell them something about us that aligns with them, to make them hear that conversation hook and go, oh, that could be interesting. Sure, you can ask me my questions, right? I've got to hook them and get them excited. So it's not the application, it's me using talking points that are going to guide what I say or potentially an email that I type. So back to pattern recognition, could I say, here's our mission statement and vision. Here is the funder's website. Could you point out for me what you find for alignment? What are the top 5 points for alignment? If you went to do such a task and pull up all the different websites and try to find them, we might miss some of the patterns that come out from all the documents, all the annual reports, all the recent grantee highlights that it's produced. It lets us take that digital summary, basically, of what it is, and then say, okay, now that we have it, how do we craft our best phone script? How do we write our best personalized email based on those connections that, oh, wow, that was pretty cool that AI helped me see that would have been hard for me to see otherwise, right? It lets me spend my time on the true relationship building. So I think there's some things like that that can be interesting to support your work. The boilerplate language, right? Here I've got a narrative library, and now AI is going to help me character count this into any and every application. It's going to be great. In case you don't know me well, that was my sarcastic voice. Grant makers never liked boilerplate information. I can't imagine that even if a grant maker starts to use AI, that they're going to, they being the AI readers, whoever they might technology-wise be, it's not going to like boilerplate either. It's not customized. It's not truly speaking to why you as an organization are a good fit to that specific funder. So personalization is still important. We don't, even though the competition feels so fierce right now, we don't want to take our solid writing content and then let AI take it and just throw the spaghetti all over the wall and see what sticks. That is not an efficient or effective thing to do with our time. We know that it still needs to be, why are you, for this grant maker, the best fit? Your team, your colleagues, your interns, your community members, your leaders, They're all awesome. And what we might be grappling with day to day, the amount of reading that we might be doing about AI and grants might not be the same level that your colleagues and team members and volunteers and et cetera are having the time for or are aware of. So helping people to talk about and think about what is appropriate in your organization is, I mean, it doesn't have to be like a daily conversation. It might be for a while, but it needs to be an ongoing discussion about what do you, as a grant-seeking organization, feel is comfortable, what feels right for you, and make sure that everyone is aware of it. That tech, it just sneaks in from the side sometimes, and so you want everyone that touches grants to be aware of why you've made some of those choices. Not you personally, that's way too much pressure on your shoulder, but why you, as an organization, as a grant-seeking team, why have you made the choices you have? And that they might change over time as tools change. So we have to constantly evaluate, how's AI working for us right now? And by constantly, well, what's the right frequency for you? Weekly? That's a lot. Yeah, you're right. There's a lot of tools that have updates every week. You're right. So maybe it's monthly, maybe. Quarterly feels okay. Going past quarterly, I feel like there's a lot of change happening. 1 year feels, I mean, that I'd be back on like my floppy disk back in elementary school is what it feels like for how rapid the change is. Change is inevitable. It's the speed at which the change is happening that really has grant professionals like, whoa, right? I feel like I've been spinning in circles. So what I wanted to do was give you a few more ideas. And actually, let me get my little fun props right here. These are green and red flags. Yeah, right? Like that super overplayed social media trend. Yep, we're going to talk about red and green flags to help us think about some day-to-day things that might be happening so that when you think about those 5 factors, the questions you might ask yourself, when you think about building a draft AI policy, here's some real-world things to get you thinking, to get the wheels turning for what you want to talk about with your team. Now, this particular slide is also taking you to a 10-minute video clip, which would be, 1, a lot to watch in our time together, but 2, is a bit tricky then for me to have put as a hyperlink. Let me grab the real link for you here. So Dr. Krista Kurlinkis, she has a PhD in like word structure. Oh, that's not quite right. I mean, like, Krista loves words. And then Krista learned to use her words and her love for words to help get grant funding. Absolutely fun to see how that turned into a grant career. But so Krista did a 10-minute presentation. You can get to it for free at the link that I just put in the public chat. And what Krista talked about was how they, as a team, used AI to sort through. After they did all the research they wanted, they got a list they were interested in. And then they said, well, I want help prioritizing. This is a monstrous list. It's too much. Using these factors, and they laid out some factors, help us prioritize this. So imagine something like a list of 100 funders that a research tool told you were a good fit. You're like, all right, well, better get some coffee going, get ready. We're going to be sitting here writing grants for a while. And we'll decide which one we're going to do based on deadline. Okay, so that could be one approach. But what Krista's team talks about in this little clip that you could watch is how they used AI to narrow down their priorities and their order in which they would approach them, using the factors that were most important to them. So to me, that explanation, totally human-driven in their approach. They used tools that they trusted to ensure that what they got was real research information, real actual grant maker names, true story. AI doesn't always put out real grant maker names. And then they used the AI assist to look for patterns and words that would help them prioritize their work. So that one to me is a big green flag. On the flip side of that, I decided, wouldn't it be fun as an example, testing AI myself to say, well, like, I mean, just tell me, dear awesome AI tool, who should I apply to for a grant for my healthcare focused organization in New York? And go. And you might say, well, I mean, I've typed things like that into Google before. Why can't I type something like that into AI? So, good news, the top 3 funders in this screen grab are real funders. So, at least it was accurate information. They are all funders that will fund in New York State. Great. And they're like some of the biggest. So, okay, I guess that makes sense by size because I didn't give it a whole bunch of prompts. Talked with a grant colleague. Actually, she wears both like individual fundraising and grants as the multiple hats at work. I said, I've got to show you this. I'm like, oh, what? Check out these results. She put in something super open-ended and similar to this. And it was about grant makers, and I think it was like housing support, and I forget which community she was looking for. Fake funders. They were not all real funders. And you're like, how? Why'd you make that up? Right? Oh, and then I'm so sorry. Right? Thanks for letting me know. You're like, oh, that didn't really help. So what a waste of time if somebody really had chased it down. We were doing it in the spirit of testing. No, too wide open, too much room for super weird stuff. All right, we talked about data privacy and security, trying to protect our client information, our community information, maybe even our program design, things that might be proprietary to us. Okay, you're like, Diane, I get it. I know, red flag. Don't put in any specific information. I like to say it just to be sure, because we want to have that policy in place so that everybody knows not to do this. And like if an intern started who's super excited and passionate and well-intentioned, that they know, nope, can't do it. But on the other hand, perhaps because you do have a very clear AI use policy and you have all your other confidentiality policies and you have loaded them into your AI tool of choice. You're like, yep, here is all of our HIPAA compliant stuff. Yep, all of our policies that tell us how we stay compliant, I have put those into my AI tool to ensure that if I ask it anything, it's not going to do anything that is against these rules. Then maybe you come up with something that you can put in. Not ever identifying information or names, but still, maybe you come up with something related to like client quotes you could use or focus group information. In terms of accuracy, making sure that the words that are put out is true and accurate. If we're trying to not do any writing, we're trying to learn about funders. This image tells us that we want to find out about the Cummings Foundation. And so the question I asked, does the Cummings Foundation allow for contact before applying to them? And it says yes. And so you might be super excited. And it's got Joyce, the executive director, and Andrew, the deputy director. I've got phone numbers. I've got emails. Yes. Wait. I really should verify things because I'm like, I just generically typed in the Cummings Foundation. And that's what I knew them as. If I was thinking about them in shorthand, look at their text from their website, a representative of Cummings Foundation. Cummings Foundation has a policy of. They're actually legally known as the James H. Cummings Foundation. And, oh, by the way, so not only do they not allow any communication, so like you might not make a great first impression, but they're in Buffalo, New York. Totally different geographies than the other Cummings Foundation that I found. So we want to verify, not just take quick action on what we read, and we want to use multiple sources if what we're using is going to influence the way that we reach out to a grant maker. AI, if we ask it questions, to me, it's just one piece of a puzzle not in like a 1,000-piece puzzle, but at least like, a good 24-piece kiddo-size puzzle, right? It can be an okay percentage of it. Yeah, if it was like 1,000, it'd be a teeny tiny percent, right? But like, it isn't the only thing. We need to verify through other sources. Think of AI as a supporting team member. I work with a colleague in the training space, and he says, think of AI as a team member. Like, I mean, I like being able to talk to my team members, like being able to ask them how their weekend was. Or, oh, that's a new mug. That's cute. Where did you get that? Like, I want to be able to talk with them. So I'm like, oh, really? I have to think about them as a team member? But as like a supportive assistant, in my mind, because I grew up in the 80s, I think of the Jetson TV show, and I think of like all the assistants, like the way that the robots would be there. I'm like, okay, so I'm going to go with like, it's just a support. It makes my day a little easier. It's not going to be the real decision maker for us. We need to think about how we're going to interact with our grant makers, what we're going to write. You know how I told you, like with tools, let's be careful. Let's pick tools that are known with some caveats. Has anyone had a chance to look at Candid's beta tool that they released for funder recommendations? Go ahead and let me know in the public chat if anybody had a chance to check this out. This came out early summer. Wasn't great. I mean, it was cool that they did it, and they're known for being a technology tool provider. They've got Foundation Directory online. They can charge a pretty penny for what that costs each year. People rely on them for having all of their funder information. They've got beautiful images that go with it to help you visualize recent grantee data. They've done a nice job over time of building government work into it, not just foundations. Their software engineers do a nice job. And you're right, they did call it beta when it came out. But it couldn't recognize all of the nonprofits, like real nonprofits. You could enter an organization name or their EIN. I entered some real EINs for organizations I know, and it was like, nope, can't find it. What? They're there. And then for one, when it did find it, I let it find different sources. That would be like 5. None of them made any sense for that organization. Absolutely none. It didn't make sense if you looked at their recent grantee list as a nonprofit seeking grants. It didn't make sense based on where geographically they were located, where their 990 said they were based in. 0 sense. So just because the tool is already well known for something else, it doesn't mean that you need to be an early adopter just because it's free or just because it's part of your subscription. You want to make sure that it is already vetted as a meaningful tool that is going to help you be efficient and effective while, oh yes, you guessed it, also aligning with your AI policy and guidelines that you and your colleagues are agreeing to. For AI in grants, do you think it's going to stand still for long? I think that by the time I come back from the Grant Professionals Association, right, I'm going to have all sorts of new learnings. I'm going to have a whole new notebook full of things. But, the thing that to me is the green flag, I know where I'm watching. I know who some of those early tech adopters are that are super excited, and I'm like, I might let them test some things. Kick the tires on it a little bit. I'll wait 2 weeks and see what they say. Like, it's not going to be that big of a deal if I wait just 2 weeks before they're like, oh my gosh, or they're like, oh no, don't. If somebody wants to be an early tech adopter, okay, because that'll help make it more efficient and more effective for me down the line. But what I'm really paying attention to, the code of ethics doesn't change. That's not what I'm actually watching. There's a frequently asked questions section that is linked from the Grant Professionals Association. Here, I'll type the web address in here for you if that's easier than just seeing it on the screen. In fact, let me know, how many of you have seen the Grant Professionals Association Code of Ethics before? Let me know in the public chat. For yes and for no. It's a code of ethics. Not anything too exciting. But the FAQs that are linked on that page I just put in the public chat, that is actually taking the questions that people pose to the ethics committee and then publishing them on their website. It sounds like they're filtering it more, but they're not. It's really like they get a question, let's put it up. We get a question, let's put it up. So that is worth watching because of all of the new things that have come into the space. But the other is that the ethics committee will put out blog articles on the Grant Professionals Association site. They will put on webinars, in particular during Ethics Month, and they have a lot to say. They'll do like discussion dens at conferences. Sometimes you'll see different committee members pop up at like local chapters. So they're doing a really nice job of being super public so that people can get to them if they have questions. And at a minimum, you can always submit an inquiry if you have a question about something. So they're what I'm watching for some of those really like the big guardrails for us to consider when we're thinking about tools or about policies. Within those big guardrails that they set forward, are there a lot of small nuances that are going to really be specific to you. Now, what I want to say is that, well, granted, the Code of Ethics, right? Like it's pretty dry reading, whether it's Grant Professionals Association or Association of Fundraising Professionals. But what we don't want to do is assume that it's not changing. Rather, we want to pay attention. Maybe we want to set a Google alert in case it changes. Or we say, you know what, I'm going to set a calendar reminder so that every 6 months I go back and I take a look at the Code of Ethics and I check to see if there's any maybe specific questions that have been posed. Something like that, I think, is a good idea. When we look at their Code of Ethics, these are, among others, what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to encourage colleagues to embrace and practice the Code of Ethics. What does that look like? Well, to me, when it comes to AI, it means having open conversations about why we think an approach may or may not be right for our organization. I think that's what it's really about. And when we're stuck, asking a question. Now, I did call out Association of Fundraising Professionals, and you can find theirs at afpglobal.org. It's not the same, obviously, as the Grant Professionals Association because theirs is all fundraising, all fundraisers. Grant Professionals Association is just a teeny tiny focus of the total fundraising community. Is there the same answer for each and every fundraiser? No, for the same reason there's not the same answer for each and every grant-seeking organization for how they're going to think about ethics. But if you look at the very bottom point on this slide, it says, be aware of the codes of ethics shared by other professional organizations that serve philanthropy. Above it was the one similar to what GPA said. Encourage people to embrace and practice these ethical principles. So knowing, geez, the Grant Professionals Association is thinking about AI and its impact on ethics. And AFP is thinking about the impact of AI and ethics. And ACES, that copywriting and editing association, they're thinking about it too. Great, I should be aware that it's a pretty hot topic and not one that we should ignore and say it doesn't impact us. It impacts all grant-seeking organizations in lots of different ways. Having an AI policy that creates open discussion, a safe place to ask questions, look at new tools, to me, that is the gold standard of being not just innovative, not just innovative and trend-setting, but most importantly, efficient and effective so we can get the grant dollars that our organizations need. I could talk about this and we could get into individual examples, and we could talk about it all day. But you only had 90 minutes with me. I'm happy to answer any questions after today. Please feel free to reach out, even if it's a message on LinkedIn. I know that sometimes feels like a lot less stress than, say, I don't know, like an email in your inbox. But I'm here to take any of your questions that you have that we haven't addressed today. You put some real good ones in that public chat as we went through. But if you have outstanding questions about how you're using AI, something you wanted me to address today that I didn't bring up. Like I said, I wasn't getting into specific tools because they're changing too fast and it's unique to your organization for what is going to be okay or not. But happy to take any questions now or to have you reach out afterwards. So I'll stick around while Brooke handles a few of those closing housekeeping things.
Yay, thank you so much for such a fantastic presentation, Diane. This really is such a cutting edge and important topic, you know, kind of new frontier for everybody involved. It was amazing how you put all this together and gave advice. We hope that you guys can show Diane some love in the webinar feedback survey. I have put the link for you in the chat. It is also available in the shared notes section. And while you can't click on the actual slide on the screen now, if you did download the PDF of the slides, you can click on the link within the slides that you downloaded. We hope you can join us for our next webinar. That is going to be next week on the 14th. This will be about strengthening Native teams, the power of team building and development in tribal nations. Your instructor for that will be Linnell Smith. She is the owner of Black Sheep Insight Consulting and Coaching. She was with OESTA for a really long time. Linnell's awesome. We hope you guys can tune in for that. Feel free to check out this as well as our other recorded webinars. They are on archive. They go back about 2 years. It's an incredible resource, and as you know, YouTube is a free tool to use. So we encourage you to check out all the recordings we have available for you. And feel free to also check out our upcoming training events. We post about them on all our social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter. If you are a podcast fan, we hope you can check out our in-house produced one, the Hopathanga Native American podcast. You can listen to that wherever you listen to your podcasts. And then if you like to actually watch people interview their guests on video, we do post those recordings to our YouTube channel as well. There's also a Hopathanga Native American podcast playlist that you could check out. But other than that, that is all we have for you today, folks. Doesn't look like anybody's typing. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the recording. But we so appreciate everybody who tuned